The way I see this playing out is we have some optimists and we have some...
Mostly what we're doing is some modernization and moving things around.
This is an Asian Studies podcast.
My name is Kristen Looney. I'm a new assistant professor here at Georgetown in the Asian Studies program. Xi Jinping is different from Hu Jintao in that he belongs to the princeling faction of the CCP. So what this means is he comes from a family that has revolutionary credentials. In China. He also has a different educational background. Some people say that both him and the vice president, who will be the premier, Li Keqiang, that both of them are social scientists, as opposed to the more kind of technocratic background of the last leadership. Xi Jinping also studied chemical engineering as an undergraduate, but then later got a PhD, I think, in law. Li Keqiang also studied economics and law. So some people see this as a positive sign that they perhaps will be more vested in reforming China's political system and improving its governance institutions, and not necessarily so fixated on economic growth and the mechanics of that. I think it's a little bit too much to read into that he is a potential political reformer. He was groomed by Jiang Zemin, who is politically quite conservative. And because he's a princeling, it's presumed that he has a more vested interest in preserving the good reputation of the Chinese Communist Party, because he's a descendant of earlier generations of it. So that perhaps makes him more conservative. In any case, he faces a divided Politburo and a divided leadership. Hu Jintao is still around, and his kind of proteges also have spots on the Politburo. So he's by no means going to have a total say over what happens. There's going to have to be a negotiation with different groups among the top leadership. The one interesting thing that happened, and I don't think was predicted, was that Hu Jintao did give up civilian control of the military. Deng Xiaoping, I believe, retained that when Jiang Zemin was president. Jiang Zemin retained that when Hu Jintao was president, and waited a few years until that transition was complete. So some people would say that this is a positive sign that the transition from one generation of leaders to another is becoming more routinized, more institutionalized, and that the new leadership is not as beholden to the elderly party members. He also retired before the age of 70, which is a new thing for China, because Jiang Zemin was over 70 when he retired. Deng Xiaoping was as well. And so there do seem to appear these rules that are now being followed. Economically, I think that the challenges are not that different than the challenges that the Hu Jintao administration faced. China has been struggling since the Asian financial crisis with how to restructure its economy so that it's less dependent on exports, and that it has a very strong domestic consumer base that can allow for economic growth to continue on for decades to come. And so this is a major challenge for Xi Jinping's administration moving forward, is how to build up the domestic consumer base. Hu Jintao's strategy for doing that was large-scale infrastructure investment. That kind of method has come under criticism as something that's unsustainable, that creates these kind of economic bubbles followed by slowdowns. And so perhaps Xi Jinping will try a different way of increasing consumer spending in China, or building up the consumer base that's less dependent on heavy top-down state investment in infrastructure. And I think some people would say was more about making China's economy more open, deregulating some of the sectors that the state still controls. One thing that Hu Jintao doesn't get enough credit for is that in many parts of rural China, rural unrest is much less a problem now than it was in the early 2000s. And that's because the Hu administration abolished the agricultural tax and implemented this large rural stimulus program, and has really emphasized rural development for the entirety of his kind of reign as president. The new socialist countryside policy in many ways has been quite successful at changing, I think, farmers' perspectives towards the government government. They do think that the government has adopted certain policies that are beneficial to them. That being said, there's still these flashpoints that you see in Chinese rural society, mostly centering on the issue of land. There's a lot of contentious politics surrounding the question of land in China. It has not been privatized. I doubt it will be privatized under the Xi Jinping administration. This is something that the CCP has been very firm on, that land, if you privatize it, the thinking is that a lot of farmers will sell their land for quick cash, but then they'll lose an important source of security. But there does have to be some progress on this issue, right? If not privatizing it, then how do you protect farmers' land rights better? And so that's a major challenge for the Xi Jinping kind of administration moving forward politically.
For the Asian Studies Department at Georgetown University, this has been an Asian Studies Special Report. To find more podcasts like this one, log on to our website at asianstudies.georgetown.edu, where you can learn about our academic programs and upcoming events on campus. Thank you for listening.